Welcome back to our fireside chat session. And in fact, any conversation around employee engagement or employer branding, innovation in today's context seems incomplete without mentioning technology. With the rise of artificial intelligence and automation in the people and workspace, the impact of generative AI cannot be ruled out. So, up next is a special fireside session on humanizing employer brand in the era of generative AI. This conversation will shed light on the strategies and the approaches that organizations can adopt to leverage technology while preserving the human touch in employer branding and HR functions. I would like to take a moment to introduce our experts to our audiences. Joining us today is Neerav Jagar, Chief People Officer, Sugar Cosmetics, a people and culture leader with more than 19 years of experience. Neerav is a strong communicator and relationship manager at all levels with an excellent track record of developing, delivering, and leading transformational solutions and operations. He's recognized for being high energy, results driven, creative, responsive, and a problem solver. Welcome, Neerav. Happy to have you here on this session.
Thank you, Pallavi. Thank you for the kind words.
Also, I would like to invite Anjali, who's going to moderate the session for us. Anjali Ragwanshi, Chief People Officer at Randstad India. Anjali is a strategic business partner who facilitates, supports, and challenges business leaders along with anticipating the much needed focus and change in workplace dynamics and with the ever evolving business landscape. Her experience ranges from industries like IT, automotive, to consulting. She's been instrumental in business continuity through developing a talent management framework, which brings in all elements of talent together, like attracting, retaining, developing, and engaging employees. She's been key in driving a performance based culture in the organization, moving away from the traditional performance management approaches. A hearty welcome to you, Anjali. Looking forward to a great session ahead. Though I now pass on the stage to you, stage is all yours for the next 20 minutes.
Thank you so much, Pallavi, and welcome, Nirav. I'm
Thank you,
really
Anjali.
looking forward to having a great conversation with you here today. And before I ask my first interesting question to Nirav, I think just setting the context for the audience, especially given that we are talking about REBER here, the Randstad Employer Branding Research, and it's all about employer branding. And today we will talk about generative AI or technology in the context of employer branding to a large extent as
Right.
such. And we know that employer branding in the traditional format has been an elongated, a manual process, sometimes intangible, because people find it difficult to really have a measurable impact of how your employer branding is really driving
Yeah.
things for your business. And at the same time, we believe that generative AI is something that can really bring scale, target, measure impact to an incredible accuracy, especially in the new era as we look at things, and also enhances your outreach and inclusivity as a
Yeah.
brand, because it's humanly impossible for you to really reach out to everybody out there, right? So Neera, with that backdrop, I would love to ask you this question, especially that everybody is talking about digital transformation in their organization for both business and HR. And keeping that in mind, how do you think that organizations can really leverage technology while not losing on the empathy and the emotional intelligence side of their employer brand? Over to you, Nirav.
Hey, thanks, Anjali. I think a very dichotomous statement to be made. Future and back. It sounds almost like interstellar. Uh, but the fact is that, isn't it? Right? Today we talk about AI, which is staying predictive. By the nature of the term predictive means that we're going to have to peek into the future and sort of anticipate what's coming our way. uh, it's something that we as people function leaders have always pined for the longest time, right? We wanted, like, can please somebody tell me when my star performers are going to likely to feel vain in their performance, or are likely to look out for something more interesting and challenging out there. And these are the problems that we had really really long to solve for the longest time. And here is a solution, a potential solution that's likely to make that happen for us. So I think it's super exciting, right? Because anything that you can anticipate and prepare for it, it just makes your life so much better. And that's just one side of the story. But if you just look at the human nature and how we have become what we have become today, is that some of the life skills are not formally taught to us ever, right? And one of the elements is about, say, empathy. I don't remember uh, when I was taught empathy in my school, or even my child is being taught empathy in school. And so what happens is that these kids will grow up and they will, probably get formally educated. They'll join an organization, and suddenly the organization is saying, "Okay, now we have a team. You've got 3, 4 people reporting into you. Why don't you demonstrate empathy towards their issues?" Uh, that's little unrealistic the way I see it, and that's where I say that this is a dichotomous situation that we're going to face with. That we're going to have to go back in the past. At the same time, we're going to have to transcend ourselves in the future. And while it's sounding very enticing, people leaders will have to really, really build that repertoire in themselves and strengthen whatever they possess so far to be able to make these shifts pretty quickly. Uh, and honestly, if you ask me, technology is an easier solve, right? So what happens with technology is the more permeative it becomes in the system, the more economical and more widespread it becomes. So if not the version 1 or version 2 or version 3 of AI, by the time it becomes version 5 or version 6, we should be in a place where we are able to afford that at a commercial use. But it's not as quickly for, say, developing empathy, developing communication skills, listening skills. Now, these are all life skills that take some time to build, and that gestation is going to be a bit of a concern for us to build, right? So, and the whole spectrum is really wide that we talk about. We're talking about first time leaders to business leaders to organization leaders. The challenge is real, and we will have to really, really find very creative ways to solve for this, because the business is not waiting for anybody, the markets are not waiting for anybody, technology is not waiting for anybody, and we'll have to be really, really quick in ideating, finding a solve, executing, beta testing, executing again, so that we're able to institutionalize it much faster than the market evolves around us.
Absolutely, Nirav. I think you've given us a lot to reflect upon, and of course, we were never taught empathy in our schools, right? And but that's a need of the hour. Very beautifully put together for all HR professionals to sort of reflect upon. And pace is the key.
Yeah,
Absolutely, business isn't waiting for anyone.
yeah,
So with that, I guess given that again two HR professionals talking over here, I'm sure HR as a fraternity and audience is very keen to sort of understand. And in fact, yesterday I saw a report again, kind of resurfacing around great resignations hasn't ended yet, and the fight for the top talent continues in the market. In that context, how do you think HR as a function can really leverage technology to really drive employee engagement within the organization?
see, I think, see, decision making is very emotional, right? And whether we like it or not, it's got its own cycle. And people's emotions and the cycle of those emotions are directly connected to, and I've seen this trend in multiple businesses that I've worked with. It's directly connected to the business cycle, it's directly connected to the appraisal cycle, whether we like it or not. Their own appraisal, their team appraisal. It's also directly connected to, what I call as recognition cycle, right? Now, when we look at an organization, now see, this is raw data available to me. But today, do I have a model that really populates this and throws a dashboard back at me to say that, hey, you know what, now that I have this data, I'm going to tell you that what percentage of your people are likely to be disengaged to this percentage from your ideal, and hence they run the risk of slipping below, right? I don't have a model of that kind today. Would I love to? Absolutely, yes. Does AI solve from it? Yes, it does. But what does AI need? AI needs rich data, right? Today, Chat GPT has got 100 million users in a matter of 2 months. It's never happened in the history of mankind or humankind for that matter. Uh, Gmail took 5 years to get there, right? So I think when you get that model right, it spreads very quickly. But I think as professionals in this space, we should really look at how quickly can I build this data, right? And what are the legitimate ways to build this data? Now, we also have to be cognizant of the fact that data has to be consented. We have to be compliant by all the data prevention laws, data protection laws, Indian and foreign. India is extremely vigilant about data protection and personal rights. So while you do collect data, you'll have to be careful about what you're collecting, how you're collecting, where are you storing, and what rights are you really empowering your people with, because it can't just become your proprietary, right? Something as important as Aadhaar also has laws which prevents you from saving Aadhaar on your own system, right? Because that's a law. And I anticipate that in near future we will also have laws of that kind of seriousness and impact in this space as well. Now, either we can wait for that law to become a reality and then tweak our whole model around it, and suddenly wake up one day and say that, oh my God, today I don't have data. Or we can be mindful of that and build our model in such a way that we are able to build something which respects right to forget, right? We all have this right to forget, uh, to every individual. So then, we should extend that right to our employees as well, and work with them to make it rich. Because at the end of it, you're not trying to influence them, you're not trying to gain out of their information, or it's not secretive, or it's not something that's going to be in any way punitive back onto them. It's all about us saying that, hey, we just want to listen to your preferences, we just want to listen how you're feeling at this point in time. And imagine if we do this on a very high frequency, you are going to get multiple data points through the year, at least about 200 to 50 of those data points in a year, which normally most of the organizations would have done like a one climate survey in 2 years and waited for the whole world to evolve around it and say, I'll do my actionables and we'll work on it. I think we are gone past that, right? So I think the whole cycle of data collection, actioning, revisiting what we have been, what that data has thrown up at us, and designing your all systems around that. I think it's going to become real. So whatever edits we are making to our policies, systems, once in 2 years or once in 3 years, maybe twice a year could become a reality. So not the comfortable space, but yeah, I mean, just being prepared for it might just make sense.
Absolutely. It's an uncomfortable space. I think what you really brought out, Nirav, is one thing, that aspect that in the hurry to kind of collect data, we miss is the privacy of people, the regulations around
Yeah,
it, and the
yeah,
ethics of it is a very, very critical element, which sometimes in the hurry and the rush, people do kind of ignore. So, thank you for bringing
yeah,
that
yeah,
up
yeah.
as well
And if
for
I
the.
may add one more point over there, Anjali, what happens is that when you surreptitiously collect data, it's basically blindsiding your people, and that's dilution of equity in terms of trust, right? And your people won't trust you with that. And when they feel that my company is trying to get my data without my consent, it raises questions on multiple things. Yeah,
Absolutely. And yes, and the discipline of data as well, because your data or your analytics is as rich as what you have in your hand, right? So it's
yeah,
also
exactly. I mean,
important.
you can't have garbage in, garbage out, right? I mean, you got to be very truthful of what you're preparing, and you should have the patience. And you see that there's no glory in getting there fast and doing a shoddy job, right? I mean, what are you gonna do, getting to the best of the situation and then realizing, oh my goodness, my the whole of the data was actually substandard to by 50%, and there's nothing that you can do with that data
Yeah.
actually.
It's a half-baked information and
Yeah,
doesn't help
yeah,
anyone. So yeah,
yeah,
absolutely fantastic points there, Nirav. Coming
yeah.
back to the next question, I mean, in the employer branding research, we talk about these three pillars, which is reputation, your employee experience, and employee value proposition, right? How do you think generative AI, do you think, can help us optimize these three pillars of employer branding as such as HR professionals?
Um, why not? I mean, you see, the thing is, the whole premise of AI is to constantly be learning, right? And this AI is learning as you and I speak. Also, maybe it's listening to me and you right now, and it's trying to
Yes.
build a model around us. I'm suddenly feeling very important, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's basically just it's omnipresent now, whether we like it or not. It's unleashed. Let's just put it that way, right? So it's there. It's learning every minute, every second, every microsecond. And if it's going to happen, then why don't we really leverage that to do good to our people
Yeah.
and bring that experience to a much elevated level than it has ever been before? And what better than being predictive and anticipative in our way to engage with our talent? potential, existing, and even the past. Right. I mean, I think one of the things that we tend to miss out is that why can't we really engage with our past employees and be in communication with them, right? I mean, it doesn't cost you anything, but it's always good to be keeping them informed about what the organization is doing now, how we have done, so on and so forth. So now let's just very specific questions that you asked in terms of your reputation, experience, and
Employee value proposition.
employee
Value
EVP.
proposition.
EVP. So if we look at, what is the differentiator for me from the market, and you will see historically the brands that have stood out have not stood out on frills and a flash in a pan kind of scenario, right? They've actually created more dilution to the brand than actually gaining brand. So what happens is that you have to be very careful, particularly when you're doing the brand reputation work. It's not just the technology, it's your conduct every single day, and particularly the leaders. And this is where we have to be the conscience keepers. We might have to stick our neck out and make the room listen to the uncomfortable truth, right? Because if we don't speak, then we have no right to really propagate reputation of an organization or employer brand, because what you say and what you don't say both get construed as an employer brand, right? So while your value system might be saying something, but if a leader demonstrates a very contrary behavior, you should have the conviction in you to really make that heard and actioned upon at the appropriate forums. And that's very critical. And this really breaks down to the smallest of decisions and actions as we speak about. So it's a daily ticker, it's not like a one event. So you've got to be doing that. Employee experience, I think technology can revolutionize it. I think we can just make it so ultra slick that people should feel that I think they are really experiencing a very high quality engagement. It can start even before a person's joined. Interactions, engagements. You could have a chatbot which actually replicates an organization representative, and do a pre-feed into that chatbot to kind of make it very very AI generative, which kind of can become a specific AI bot for every function. Like, I mean, if I have somebody coming in joining me at a mid senior level in marketing, I would have a sort of Jarvis interact with that individual and kind of do like a quick touch base saying that, hey, if there is everything okay, kind of pop up in an email in a periodic manner, and say that is there anything that I can relay back into the system. And that comes back and tells me that, hey, you know what, I mean, from the body language he seemed little under under convinced about the whole offer and might just want to slip out. I mean, there's something as drastic as that, right? So I think it's something that can really revolutionize the experience, and I think it's time we should really capitalize that. um, EVP, I think it's the whole idea about an employee life cycle. I think being paperless is now a default, but being predictive is going to be the differentiator. And this, I'm going to go back to my point when saying that how rich can you make your data, how can you be really having deep and engaging content. And this is where really the two aspects of a human, which is technology and the humanness of us, has to really fuse together, because you can't have people interacting with technology all the time. You can't have people really over responding to questionnaires. It gets tiring after a point, right? That lack of human interface, we know what's happened to us, right? When we get calls from banks and automated responses and all that, I mean, it doesn't interest us. So we all need that human touch. That's how we are designed. So you have to really build that capability in your people to really drive that engaging conversation. And I think that today is a tough skill to build. Just having an engaging conversation today is a task, because the workforce is so distracted because of the way we are being conditioned today with so many distractions around. I think to hold a 15-minute conversation undivided, without any distractions, either on phone or laptop or anything, I think that by itself is an achievement. So I think that, with putting that data back into the system to be able to tell us how people are likely to feel in this time of the month, year, quarter, and so on and so forth, I think it's going to become a great symphony of humanness and technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the points that I take back with me, Nirav, is first when you started that AI is a given, right? There is no point. It's penetrated our lives, so we need to learn to live with it. I think that's
That's
the
true.
first thing, and predictive analysis and all of that that can really drive some of these pillars that we spoke of: reputation, EVP, and employee experience, right? And it can be really hugely impacting, especially our lives as HR as we drive business outcomes. So I think amazing. Nirav, we've been talking about data and analytics all throughout as I had asked question, and you kind of have highlighted that. But just kind of again, because it's a very thick conversation at this moment in the fraternity of
That's
how
true.
people analytics and data driven HR can really drive some of the elements, and how can that be weaved into a people strategy to
Hmm.
bring in productivity, collaboration, and all of that for us. So maybe a little bit if you can highlight about that, that would be great.
See, I think now, if you look at the evolution of our function has been that we were very rudimentary in our approach. Then came the revolution of psychometrics, and then came the tools and all of that. And maybe there is a merit, and I've yet to come across a tool that's actually gonna uh, marry uh, psych psychometric tools and predictive analysis to give me a product which tells me that I'm actually using the old principles and now adding principles of AI, and start anticipating sort of behavior from people. Now, when I start looking at it from that vantage point, I say that, hey, that's a great opportunity for us. Can somebody really create a product of that kind? I would love to lay my hands on that. Um, my sense is that it's not a massive threshold that people need to cross on that one. It should be doable because there's just so much of technology prowess available in the market today. So I think it's an easier hack. But the problem is there, that how do we really execute on the recommendations, right? Because see, recommendations are easier said than done. I mean, we know we do 360 feedbacks, and we do pulse surveys and all of that. The problem comes about when it's time to action. We found an issue. The time taken from the point to being aware of the issue to action it and execute it and show the correction takes time. And that's the pace that I was referring to in our opening chat, that if we do not set pace for quick personal transformations, transitions, we could be lagging behind some of the other organizations, or actually at large, at industry level or at an economy level, which means that I think the conversation has to shift from just the technology transformation to personal transformation, because technology transformation is easier. Personal transformations take time, and it needs to be made in a very concerted manner, in a very structured manner, caring manner, and people have to have patience to stay in that discomforting zone for longer. So that's the tough task. If we are really able to build that culture, I think that's, in my mind, a strategic differentiator.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you, Nirav. I think it's been a fantastic conversation. As a HR professional, I've enjoyed having this, and I'm sure our audiences would have loved that as well. Thanks for bringing in all the imperative points. Over to you,
Thank you.
Palki.
Well, it was wonderful listening to both of you, and I wish this conversation never ended, but we have to sort of find up the day. Interesting way to close the Power Pack session that we had. Thank you, Anjali, for summarizing the takeaways, and Neerav also for sharing your expertise, those examples that you gave. I'm sure our audiences also would take a lot of learnings from this session today. Thank you both.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. Take care. Bye.